The Russians have decided to focus all of their energy on Donbas right now, most of their troop movements, most of their focus, because Putin is obsessed with taking Kramatorsk. The entire city is preparing for the mother of all battles. The streets with the cafes are full of huge reels of barbed wire and dragon's teeth, anti-tank dragon's teeth, because the city is preparing for a full-blown battle.
40 days after President Zelensky launched a campaign to pressure Russia toward peace, there is still no ceasefire. Overnight, Moscow carried out another deadly attack, and not a single ballistic missile was intercepted. At the same time, Ukraine's strikes are putting growing pressure on Russia's military industry, logistics and economy. Some analysts now say the country is weaker than at any point since 1991. Irish journalist and filmmaker Caolan Robertson joins me right now in the studio, and we're going to have a long conversation. Caolan, welcome.
Thank you for having me again.
So yeah, it was a very heavy night for Ukraine and a deadly night especially for Ukrainian capital and the region of Kyiv. And your video, the one that you shared on social media with the public, became viral because of the unprecedented sounds and picture and everything. So basically, the main issue, we have not been able in Ukraine neutralize any of the ballistic missile that Russia sent. It's almost 30 of them, plus Zircon, as far as I understood. Almost 20 people have died just in a few hours of attacks. What do you think? How do you feel about everything that's going on right now, especially the fact that we don't have any interceptors?
Well, it feels like it's getting a lot worse and a lot more dangerous every single day. Everything that's being fired at this city is getting through. And that means Russia can hit the targets they want to hit. Targets like residential buildings, schools, hospitals, logistics hubs, train stations, everything they want to hit, they can do it with impunity. And not just the Russians. Now the Russians have got new help. It looks like the North Koreans are deploying an entire new unit, not just missiles, but a whole new unit. To help them fire these missiles. So now Russia's got Iran supplying drones and parts, North Korea supplying troops, supplying missiles and units, and China helping them evade sanctions and supplying them parts. And this all against the largest country in Europe, against the capital of that country. There's not really even an opportunity to run and hide, right? Because you get about 2 minutes now of a warning. These missiles are bigger, they're faster, they're more destructive. And when they're fired from Russia, they come here with thousands of kilometers an hour. And they also hit the places people are hiding, right? Just a few weeks ago, we had one of the shelters where people were hiding hit here in Kyiv. There's almost nowhere to run to. So it feels like this is becoming a really dark time. And we spoke about this last year. What will happen when the war comes to an end? What will happen in the future? And both of us kind of predicted this. We said it feels like things are going to get a lot darker before they can get better, because what Russia does, like all totalitarian states in their final grasps or when they're becoming desperate, is they lash out more than ever. And that's exactly what Russia's doing now. You know, the long-range strikes that Ukraine are doing are impacting Russia's economy. Oil production is down 23% right now. Well, it's actually down to the lowest in 23 years. And the response to that is more violence every single time. That's what Russia does when it feels cornered.
Unfortunately, I have the same feeling. And before we're going to move to the question about successful strikes on wild breweries and Russian logistics, I want to take a note that at this stage, I don't want to underestimate the help of our Western partners. But at this stage, it seems like Russia is more successful with its allies getting the help from them than we do.
It is, because this is World War II, where you have the situation in World War II, an allies and an axis, without an ally. It would be as if Germany was storming across Europe, invading other countries, and the allies, Britain and France, were still debating whether a war was even happening. We're still debating whether what the Germans were doing was right and wrong. This is exactly what that situation is. And that's how Russia knows this. The democratic world is still divided and broken up and can't make a single decision on whether they should support Ukraine or not, or do anything tangibly. And so Russia can go around, collect a bunch of friends on their playground, friends like North Korea, China, all the other countries, and smash this country as much as they want. And that's why this is so dangerous. And again, what's unbelievable is how Ukraine has held off not just the Russian army for so long, but this giant axis of evil that is growing every single day. And it's growing because there are no consequences for joining Russia's war of aggression. When China joins, when Iran joins, when North Korea joins, there are no sanctions put in place on the companies that are still operating in these countries, on the embassies that are still operating. There's no consequences for helping Russia do what they're doing. Whether it's Ireland supplying Russia with raw materials, there are no consequences for helping Russia kill people.
Okay, we're going to move to... You mentioned two things. The first one, Moscow. Okay, what is your take on that? Because there was an explosion in the restaurant when one of the Russian general, Chaiko, was celebrating his birthday with his family. So few people died, definitely, but about his destiny is uncertain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whether he died or not is not that relevant. It's that there is nowhere safe in Russia, even for the military generals at a high-profile gathering in Moscow. Every single general and military commander in Russia now know that there is nowhere they can go for dinner peacefully, because there's nowhere in Ukraine you can go for dinner peacefully. So why should they have to have dinner in peace? I mean, this is the fair logic, to be fair. We can't go for dinner here in Kyiv without knowing for sure that the restaurant could be hit by a Russian missile launch with 2 minutes notice. So why should the people launching those missiles get that kind of peace? So, you know, this is completely fair. But, I mean, it's a very weird story. It's very interesting. Obviously, Ukraine denies being involved in this. I'm sure they're probably involved in it, but
I was thinking about that, because why we then killed our agent? That's the question.
I don't know. I mean, what is strange is, I don't know if you remember my Venice Biennale documentary.
Yes, of course.
There was a Russian-Italian man who tried to steal my trophy, who denied being connected to the event, who is a co-founder of that restaurant and a chef there.
In Moscow?
Yeah. So that's weird as well. I'm going to look at...
Okay.
Yeah, so there's lots of strange connections with people. It's kind of quite a dodgy restaurant connected to the Russian elite, essentially, right? The ambassadors, everybody. But he's connected to that. He seems to be connected to everything. But again, yeah, it's harder to ignore the war when it's right in front of the Kremlin. And you know, there was something else that happened. The restaurant, I don't think anyone really saw this, but I found the restaurant within 2 hours of this happening because I was doing some research. And I went on their Instagram story, and they'd posted a story 30 minutes after it happened that said, everything is fine in the restaurant. Like, everything is fine, everything's operating correct. Nothing to see, which is just so typical.
After 30 minutes of everything happened, I saw pieces of dead bodies spreading on the internet, but definitely not everything is fine. Everything is fine.
Well, I saw that the chef's table was 3 blocks down the road. You know, it's like... But this is a typical Russian response to put this on Instagram as well, to say everything is fine. But that was very significant because the elites in Russia have always seen Moscow as this sort of different universe to the front line, totally separate from it, where it's very, very protected, where it's very far away, where they can enjoy fine dining and all sorts of activities at the Opera House, pretending like they're not doing a genocide down the road. And that is being shattered right now, right in the heart of it. I mean, this restaurant was a few kilometers from the Kremlin. It was right bang on in the city center. And again, Moscow did everything it could to make sure that people could only enjoy watching the war on television, and now it's arriving as the 4th course in a tasting menu. Steve Rosenberg, who's a great, political commentator, journalist at the BBC, analysed all the newspapers the next day, and there was almost no mention of this attack at all, because it was pretty much covered up.
Yeah, and going back to restaurant, I just visited Odesa. And I was at the restaurant, and the problem in Odesa that the air raid sirens coming after something something is happening. So I was just sitting having a dinner with my friends, and the rockets were just flying over my head, like banderol, we call it. So it's just a super speed, like a drone rocket, and it's on a high speed, and you're just having a dinner, and that's happening. I think you have to be a very extreme person and insane in some sense to go for a vacation, to take a quick rest in Odesa. But Russia is doing horrible things over there, and just attacking all these ships that are supposed to sell Ukrainian grain and Ukrainian goods all over the world. And now the Black Sea is blocked by Russians.
Well, what was it like for you visiting? Because you've always gone to Odesa for a vacation, but this seems like a whole different universe now.
I was usually passing Odesa going to Romania, and now I just stayed for a few nights. and that's different. And to be honest, with the shelters, it's a bit complicated because when you are swimming and probably the drones are flying, you usually hear them. You don't see it immediately. You want to hide somewhere on the beaches, but there is no any shelters over there. You have to run upstairs to the park. So it just, I mean, in those 1 minute, you can be easily attacked. So it's not easy. And I remember while I was running to the shelter once, I remember there was two young boys behind me and one saying to other, listen, I'm from Kharkiv and I feel myself much more in danger in Odesa than in Kharkiv, which is true. I've been in Odesa in 2023 and there was less people, but less dangerous. And now it's more people and more dangerous. That surprised me. People are exhausted. They need to go somewhere for a rest. But definitely not Odessa, not Sergeyevka, Zatoka. All the places near the coast are safe. None of them.
Which is wild because Odessa is a place to go for rest. It's a place for resetting your mind, for relaxing. This is what the coastline in Ukraine has always been associated with. 2 weeks ago when I was in Kramatorsk, I really wanted to see the salt lakes one more time. And, you know, the healing lakes, the mud lakes,
yes.
Because people go there from all over Ukraine for decades for healing and calm. And April, who was driving me, was like, if you go to those lakes, there's like a 50-50 chance there's drones going to be right there. It's so close now, no one goes near them, and there's drone nets all torn down. But I'll drive you for 20 seconds just to quickly run out and film it. And we quickly raced in. I filmed it for a few seconds and then ran back out again. And I remember thinking, Russia has stolen the peace from these places to an extent where just to look at these lakes, just to look at the Black Sea, you have to run and then run back again. And that peace that's been stolen in the places that are designed for sanctuary is still so hard to comprehend. Because again, like Odessa is where I always used to go to, like you, for rest, even during the full-scale invasion, but in early days. And they've stolen even that. And then I guess it makes you think, how far do Ukrainians have to keep running for a moment of fucking silence? Is it into the mountains? And then what then? Will the Russians start bombing the Carpathians in a few years? When is this going to start? And it's like a constant chase just to get rest.
That's a good point, a very good one. Yeah, it's not a rest anymore. Not a peaceful place anymore. It's not nirvana, I would say. Last time we had an interview, we didn't have enough time to talk about your travel to the front. I mean, you're filming the front line, and after that, you're probably going there again. But still, let's elaborate on that more, because yesterday, the world saw a very horrible Russian entertainment when they were hunting just a man selling fruits in Kherson region. They were just hunting and making fun of him and his wife while he was selling like tomatoes and cucumbers and watermelons from his truck. And they saw it, and he was telling them that, I mean, I'm here just selling fruits and vegetables. And they hit him. Thanks God he's alive. He stayed alive, and his wife. But I mean, what is your take on everything that's going on right now on the front line? Is it also going much more severe there?
So the video of a civilian being chased by a drone is going viral right now on TikTok and all the social media platforms because people are shocked at this, shocked by how someone could be so barbaric with a remote control and an FPV drone to chase an innocent civilian down the street.
And have fun.
And have fun doing it. People should realize that this isn't one video. This is one of thousands of videos that the Russians post on the internet, boast about their crimes. And this has been going on for years. It's called the Human Safari. I've been covering it since 2024 with Serena Zabriskie. A lot of people really struggle to understand what's happening in Kherson because it's difficult for everyday people to imagine how humans could be capable of such evil. And so we shut our brains down. We think it's not possible. But it is possible because the Russians are doing it, and they're doing it every day with FPV drones for sport, for fun, because they love doing it, because there is a glorification and worship of suffering and death in Russia. It's like a death cult at this point, proven in these videos. And they do it because there is no consequences for it, right? The international organizations that are designed to stop this kind of war crime terrorism are silent about this. A lot of them side with Russia. The UN have their cars bombed all the time in Kherson, and they fail to even blame the perpetrators. They say, oh, A Russian drone with a Z on it has crashed into our truck, and the Russians have posted a video boasting about it, and the side of the Russian drone had a Z on it, and the Russians literally said, we hit the UN truck, and the UN said, we don't know who could have done this, who could possibly have hit our truck. This is what we're dealing with, same with the Red Cross, same with all these organizations. And so when the international kind of community, when the world either fails to look at this or fails to even describe it, then it enables Russia to continue doing whatever they're doing. What the Russians were doing in Kherson was a template. It was a template of evil that they have now extended all along the front lines of Ukraine, and soon in every country that Russia decides to invade next. And it is indescribably horrible. You know, I've been in Kherson reporting on this for years. The first videos that I shot there just after the full-scale invasion were artillery, and then in 2024 being hunted by one of these drones. I will never forget the feeling of looking up and seeing that buzzing, knowing that there's a controller just a few kilometers away deciding whether they hit go or not with the drone, with the grenade. And civilians have to live like that every single day. And that's now been extended all the way through Zaporizhia, all the way, you know, Nikopol, Zaporizhia, Kramatorsk, Izium, Kharkiv, Sumy, and in central Kharkiv there are now FPVs. They're taking out gas stations. This will continue in every single city near the front line, and the Kharkiv is now seeing the beginning of it in the last few weeks. The Kramatorsk, I mean, I have never seen anything like it. I was in the city just 2 weeks ago, and multiple drones exploded above our car. It was more frightening than Kherson because it's even more frequent there now. The Russians have decided to focus all of their energy on Donbas right now, most of their troop movements, most of their focus, because Putin is obsessed with taking Kramatorsk, a city that isn't his, that isn't Russian, a city that he desperately wants. If you look at a geography map of Ukraine, a typography, you can see the mountains. This is the industrial heartland of rural, classic, traditional Ukraine. If you imagine what, you know, Wales was in the Industrial Revolution, the Rust Belt of Texas, of America, this is what Donbas is. And Russia wants to steal it because it's full of minerals and resources, but it's never been Russian, right? If you look way back into the history of Konstantinivka, of Bakhmut, of all these cities, there are settlers there since before Moscow existed. Ukrainian Cossacks. The miners' strike, the Donetsk miners' strike that happened in the 90s, in the late 80s, was one of the components that historians argue led to the downfall of the Soviet Union. These were Ukrainian miners who wanted nothing to do with Moscow's rule. And yet Russia's obsessed with stealing it so that they can erase it and pretend that it was never Ukrainian. And we see that in all the cities that they occupy, including Mariupol. Putin is throwing everything he can to steal it. And I'm pretty sure by Christmas that the Russians are going to seize Kramatorsk, and this is based on all the people that I've been speaking to, and this is tragic. And people should know and care about this and watch the footage of Kramatorsk now as a time capsule. It's the reason that I go a few times a year and go often, is to try and capture what it was and what it is, which are full of Ukrainians, one of which just 2 weeks ago said to my colleague, the Russians came here to liberate us. Liberate us from what? From our brothers, our sisters, our homes, our houses, our pets? That's what they're liberating us from. This is a woman who was watching drones explode in front of her every single day. And that's what they desperately want people to know, that the Russians aren't here to liberate us. They're here to either torture us, execute us, or drive us from our homes so they can lie about the whole thing. And this is why I go and capture this and film it, even under fire. It's so dangerous. But people need to see what it was before Russia seizes it and lies about what it was and lies about all of this. And this didn't start in 2022. This started in 2014. A flight took off. That's when the war began. No plane has landed on that airport since then. And that's when the Russians did their bullshit campaign with the Donetsk People's Republic, which was just the Russian army in different uniform, and tried to seize it using all sorts of propaganda and all sorts of nonsense. Kramatorsk residents did everything they could to drive them out. They were successful, and now they have to deal with this again. One of the main reasons that I've done this last trip, and I'm going to go again, is because there's a narrative right now that Ukraine is winning on the front lines that's been spread across the internet. And if people think that Ukraine is winning, then they don't think that Ukraine might need much support anymore. What is happening in Donbas is not Ukraine winning. The front line is moving every single day in this direction, west, and it's not slowing down. In 2023, I filmed in Siversk, a village here on the map, now that's this far behind the front line, gone. In 2024, I filmed in Konstantinivka, and now it looks like this, pretty much seized by the Russians. And this is going to continue, and it's only moving in one direction. And that doesn't mean Ukraine isn't winning the psychological war or the economic war against Russia. They are. But in terms of the battlefield, they're not. And that's because they have more people that they can drag out of the streets and mobilize and push. And if they're not stopped, they will continue west and west and west, unless something drastic changes, unless Russia collapses economically. Kramatorsk will fall to Russia by Christmas, 100%. I mean, this is what all the soldiers that I was spoken to described me as. By the way,
I've heard that too.
They're now 4.5 kilometers from the airport. The entire city is preparing for the mother of all battles. You know, there wasn't much time to prepare Bakhmut for street fighting. And the streets with the cafes are full of huge reels of barbed wire and dragon's teeth, anti-tank dragon's teeth, because the city is preparing for a full-blown battle, which will be coming soon. And there's a strange, very strange environment in the city. I've never experienced it in Kramatorsk before. The years I've been filming there. And it's this calm right now. There are explosions every 30 seconds, cabs, drones. But every single person, I mean, I captured all of it, are walking through the parks. They're still cutting the grass. The sprinklers are still running, holding hands, children as well, with peace. And I think it's because people know, unless something changes, that every single sunrise and sunset is the last summer that they'll see in that city. And they know that something is about to happen, that peace is going to be gone forever, and they're almost holding on to each moment where it is possible to still be outside, to try and enjoy that city just for a few more minutes, a few more moments, just to be in their own town, the place they were born in, and to try and just experience a moment of normality and peace before all hell breaks loose. There's a girl that I went with from DTEC, who's an energy worker, and she hasn't been to Kramatorsk in a couple of years. And we were walking through the streets, and she was supposed to drive back out with me again. And she stood there in the street, and we were going to pick her up and drive her back to Kharkiv. And she said, I actually don't want to go. We said, are you sure you don't want to go? And she said, I just want to sit here. So I just want to be here for another few days just to see it, just to be with my city before it goes. I just want to experience and take it all in and breathe the air and be here before it's lost. And she just kind of stood still, and we drove away. And she was like, I'll find somewhere to stay tonight. And she went to stay with someone she knows in the city, because that's the feeling there now. It's everyone is just trying to hold on to, pretend it's normal just before it isn't. It's incredibly strange. Yeah.
Caolan, what's next then? Okay, Russia will capture Kramatorsk by the end of 2026. What's next? Maybe it's just the answer is not needed, but I mean, what's next?
Well, for the people that are left, we know what's next. The same fate as the people in Mariupol, which is destruction and erasure. For the Russians, they'll use the train stations in Kramatorsk, they'll use every facility they have to restock and resupply and dig into the ground and launch new offensives and carry on marching west and west and west and west until they can't afford to march west anymore. And the time is ticking right now. This 40-day campaign was kind of fitting in some ways, because the time is ticking. If Russia does a full-scale mobilization right now of 500,000, which it looks like, according to Ukrainian intel, they will, then things are going to get very, very, very dark in terms of the Russians moving quickly. And the Ukrainian military has one option, and that's not to fight Russia on the battlefield. Cannot compete with 500,000 new Russian mobilized, even if it's 10-to-1 ratio. Yeah. It is to just to do this on these screens to Russia before, so they can't pay the salaries of those soldiers anymore, and that will stop the war. And there's two clocks that are ticking right now. They're both at different paces. We don't know which one are going to stop first, but that's what's next.
I was reading the political analyst, and he was saying that this war is like a marathon. But usually on marathons, people who are spending much more energy, they are winning because they are not pity to themselves. They're just doing maximum. But in this war, it's like looking at the mirror. It's opposite. It's opposite. The more you're going to save yourself, I mean, Ukraine or Russia, that's going to be the winner. And you know what? Speaking about the places you're traveling, I was just reading that Russia destroyed another historic church in Kherson region, the one that has roughly survived for centuries. Do you think the world understands that Russia is not only killing civilians, innocent people and kids, but also they are trying to erase Ukrainian history, the one that's very hard to restore again?
That church has survived a lot. It survived imperial rule, it survived Soviet rule, it survived attempted erasure, it has survived European catastrophe for 3 centuries, yet it couldn't survive modern Russia. Buildings that survived World War I and World War II couldn't make it through the bullshit that Russia is waging on this country right now. And it is done on purpose to erase Ukrainian history and heritage, like the Russians have always done, through the Holodomor, through food, through the famine that we're now seeing again, through bombing the silos, through bombing the ships leaving the port in Odesa right now. It is a constant battle to try and erase everything that's Ukraine. And not even physical buildings and churches, but 9 million books have been destroyed in Ukraine in the last 2 months. In Kharkiv, in Kyiv, I'm going to go to a library today and show some of this. And that is another attempt to destroy Ukrainian language. The last time there were, and if you look at these images of these books on fire from intentional Russian strikes right now, they look exactly like this picture. This is the last time there were piles of books on fire in Europe. And it was the Nazis that were doing it. And the Nazis were doing it for the same reason the Russians are doing it, and that is to destroy history and to erase countries. And Europe was outraged by these images, and they should look at the pictures that are coming out of Ukraine right now of the exact same thing, because it is no different, except this time it's speaking Russian instead of speaking German. That's the only difference, and it's done for exactly the same reason. And again, even if you're one of those people that doesn't care about the war in Ukraine, doesn't care about what's happening here where we're sitting, if you care about human knowledge, about history, about literature, about human decency, then you should care about what Russia is doing to these libraries every single day, intentionally. It's the worst form of destruction, is to destroy a people's history, world history. Actually, those books aren't just Ukrainian books. Those are books that capture humanity that's being destroyed. And it's, whether it's churches, whether it's libraries, it's done by a country that pretends it's not doing it, a country that pretends it's Christian, a country that pretends it's decent. And this is what it really is.
Caolan, speaking about the Westerners and the vision of this war, lots of people supporting us, but lots of people, from what I see, are closing their eyes. You just unexpectedly was in Poland when Russian missile Ha-101 hit the Poland territory and left a lot of, like a huge, how do you call it?
Like a crater.
Crater.
Yeah.
It left a huge crater. And you were there by the accident, actually. But, I mean, what was your reaction? What was the reaction of locals to everything that happened on their soil?
Oh, I was the only one that was shocked by this. I mean, I turned up in Poland, I was doing something else, and I came across this giant crater that was from a huge Russian missile. And I was looking around, I was trying to speak to authorities about this, I was speaking to Polish members of parliament as well, and nobody wanted to talk about it because they couldn't blame it on Ukraine like they've been doing for the last few months. They couldn't find an excuse to blame it on Ukraine. And so they were silent about this. And I was standing there thinking, am I going completely insane? There is a crater here in the middle of a field from a Russian missile, a nuclear-capable missile that has been fired into NATO's airspace and crashed into this ground. And yes, it hasn't killed people, it's blown up a few cars, but it could have crashed into Warsaw, it could have crashed into any of these cities. And we know for a fact, because there were 20 drone incursions last year, and they couldn't shoot down more than 2 of them, that the Polish wouldn't have been able to stop it if it was to hit a building and kill a bunch of people. And no one seemed to be caring about that. And I reached out to about 20 different Polish councillors, MEPs, politicians, and no one wanted to talk to me about it. I ended up having to speak to a Lithuanian representative instead and talk about that, because Poland is captured right now, and with this obsession with Russian propaganda and blaming Ukraine for everything. It's absolutely ridiculous. And if you're one of these if you're one of these Polish nationalists right now, you know, great patriots, and you want to protect Poland, perhaps the person that put a huge crater into your country, this giant hole, is the person responsible, is the threat, rather than Ukrainian refugees that are walking down the street speaking Ukrainian, perhaps for a second. But again, this isn't about nationalism, this is about sucking up to Russia. The number one thing to remember is this is going to happen again and again and again until NATO can speak a language that Russia understands. It would be very easy for NATO to actually close the skies over Western Ukraine and shoot these things down, shoot down drones before they reach their airspace. That would also protect Ukraine, but it would send a very strong message to Moscow that NATO are no longer going to mess around, that NATO are actually going to take this seriously. What NATO could also do would be ramp up by 100% their missile technology, their missile production and their air defense production, give it to Ukraine, allow Ukraine to shoot these things down before it reaches NATO. And that would send a strong message to Russia that actually there's an alliance forming that's sick of its bullshit. But it's not doing that because it actually can't even say who did it. It can't even talk about who did this. The Polish government covered this up and then left. And the number one thing that happened last week wasn't just a crater in Poland. It was that Putin learned a lesson, and he learned something, and that's that if he throws a missile into NATO's airspace, if he bombs Poland, if he bombs Romania with a drone, nothing is going to happen. And that's a lot of information for Russia. It shows them that they can do whatever the hell they want, which they are. And that was the worst, most worrying part about this, is that...
Then I have a follow-up. Do you think that NATO countries are capable to protect themselves without the US support, that are spending lots of their rockets on the Iranian war?
Yeah, well, if NATO and Europe stops relying on America for everything, then things will change. During World War II, there was a massive revolution in weapons production, right? If you look at pictures of Britain, Great Britain during World War II, there was this huge campaign it was a lot of the women who weren't mobilized, who were staying behind. There was warehouses and factories all over the country producing shells and weapons. Almost every town and city and village had something to do with the war effort in Britain. And that's what needs to be done right now. Everyone was producing shells, they were producing missile casings, they were producing weapons ammunition, rations tins. There was a collective effort, a collective national effort to arm Britain against Nazi Germany. NATO and Europe needs to do that today. They need to have the exact same national effort. There needs to be warehouses, weapons production facilities in every single country right now, in overdrive, producing 1,000 times more than they're producing. We have the ability to do it. We have the economy to do it. We just don't have the will to do it. And we should look back at history. The last time Poland had craters in it from Russian missiles, it was a time where dictators arrived and decided that borders were optional and borders weren't necessary. And we have the same thing arriving right now today, and we need to have the same reaction.
I want to continue to speak about the NATO without the United States, but basically more about the United States itself. So that was the latest visit to Washington by Ukrainian president on Lindsey Graham funerals and then visiting American president. It was quite successful, it seems like. But then what we heard that the America is not sending any license for Patriot systems to Ukraine, like it was kind of, we need to consider that again. It's a very precious thing to give to someone. But then another thing is worrying me because Ukrainian president, he wanted to talk with Elon Musk about Starlinks and how we can use them and turn them on in Russia, to use them in favor of Ukraine. But now we have another more broader problem because of the dismissal of Ukrainian Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov. What is your take on all this chain of actions all together do you think that Elon Musk is going to help us even without, this personal connect with Fedorov?
No, so Elon Musk really respected Fedorov, and that's why when Fedorov requested that Starlink get shut down for the Russians, Musk said yes. He spoke the language that Musk spoke, and that's because he understands. He understands a lot more than a lot of his colleagues exactly how to communicate with people like Musk and exactly what needs to be done right now. And so when Zelensky showed up with his team in the US the other day and asked to speak to Musk, it's not surprising that he didn't want to speak to him because he didn't respect Zelensky, he respected Fedorov. And I hope that Zelensky's government took note from that and realized the mistake that they made by dismissing Fedorov, because he was incredibly valuable in drone warfare, in modern warfare, in communications, in speaking to Musk, in keeping Starlink open. And drones are how this war is being fought. 90% of casualties are drones. And he's not just the drone guy, the young guy in the corner. This is the person that was most equipped with understanding how drone warfare is fought and what exactly Ukraine needs to overhaul and do. And that's why Ukrainians are so pissed off at this right now. A lot of people outside Ukraine don't quite understand what's going on. And the way to really understand it is, well, first of all, Ukrainians don't put up with bullshit, whether it's from their government or for anybody else. And they have a remarkable ability to keep their government in check despite it being the worst of times right now. And that's amazing. And that's why these protests keep happening every single day. And it's because Zelensky has inherited a system. He entered a system that was surrounded with a rot, I like to call it, a Soviet kind of rot that has existed for decades. He didn't create it. It was there before him. And he's had to work with that for a very long time during war. And the intention was, and what I think a lot of Ukrainians hoped, was that he would slowly get rid of that or it would slowly disappear.
Yes.
but he has chosen comfort every single time, and he's chosen to maintain that rot instead of doing what's difficult, which is to get rid of people that don't want to leave, right? People from the old system. And people can see that, right? Ukrainians are very smart. They know what's going on. They're very aware of what is going on. They're very connected to the internet. They're watching all of this. And so the dismissal of Fedorov was choosing the easy route, which is get rid of the person making the noise, get rid of the person being noisy. And this isn't going to work when drones are dominating the skies right now, when modern warfare is being fought the way it is. And it's why these protests will probably continue to increase until something's done, because Zelensky has tried to brush this under the rug. He's tried to kind of leave it. And it's hard, it was hard for even me to discuss this topic as someone that won a medal from Zelensky, as someone that did a very positive interview, to now have a situation like this. But I came to Ukraine to tell the truth and do real journalism, right? And not skirt around these issues. But this is categorically what's happening. And unless it's addressed properly or dealt with properly, then this is just going to increase. People are very unhappy in Ukraine with the way that mobilizations are being done by another government in a lot of ways, with under their own law, apparently. And people are sick of it. And so this was almost like the final straw in a lot of ways. And last year, there was the Nabu scandal that happened, the corruption scandal, a lot of pressure, Ukrainians reacted straight away, and then it was dealt with properly, right? They reversed the decision. That's what should have happened this time. And I don't think they expected it to get louder and louder. But, this is a huge mistake to get rid of him. And I've reached out to him this week for an interview again. So hopefully, I would love to do a proper investigation into this. So hopefully he'll say yes.
I hope for that too. People are frustrated, not only on the streets, but also on social media. Every decision is getting worse and worse in Ukrainian government, and people are definitely not going to be in silence. They are not going to eat these things or ignore them like people do in Russia. No, this is not the Ukrainian approach to anything in their life. So I hope this protest will help somehow, just to probably, to get back Fedorov, because I think this is the right fit for him and right position. Yeah,
and even if Fedorov doesn't want to go back, or if it's irreversible, I think it might be irreversible at this point, because, there's been so many dynamics and problems. It's very hard to just go back into that job and pretend like nothing happened, but at least it could serve as a stark warning to the government to no longer do this kind of thing. Because I've seen, the ministers that I know in this government that I'm friends with are, young and dynamic, and they're very much like Fedorov, and they very much do not like the system. And it's been quite amazing watching that slowly replace what's already there, but it's been too slow. It's still very, very dominant, and it's not just there. It's probably also in media as well, right? There's a problem in Ukraine as well with the way that I would say media, government is run, and it's kind of still got these creep layovers from the Soviet mentality, and it's Fedorov being accused of having too much power, too many contacts in his phone was the reason that he had to go, right? This was some of the excuses as well. And instead of realizing that Fedorov had a direct line to Musk because he had earned respect, it meant that he had to go. And there's this strange mentality where in government and media, if you are successful, then you get rewarded, right? You get a pay rise, you get a few more positions. But if you're too successful, then you have to go, you become a threat to the system. And this is a Russian-type system. This exists everywhere. And that is what we were seeing with Fedorov. It's like, oh, wow, he's really great. Everyone was congratulating him. And then he became maybe too good. And then he had to go. And that is a system that has to be totally overhauled, because it ends up in situations like this with the most equipped person to deal with modern warfare no longer working in government. This is a crisis.
Okay, Caolan, we discussed a lot of important things, and I hope something will change in Ukrainian policy as well. And we're going to successfully continue what we were doing with the Russian warehouses, logistics, and oil refineries. And as you said, we're probably going to the darker times, and we just have to be ready for that. It feels like we're slowly going into some dirt and mud, and we have to be ready and to be prepared.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.